Welcome csc235 class to a quick exercise called ex5-tipcalc-fix. We already have ex5-tipcalc and we already did it and things seem to be working, except we have one little problem. Now we already fixed the problem if somebody doesn't put something in the field. And we hit ctip, we get the error message, and then we have to put something in there. I'm going to put just a 10 in here because it'll make the math easy. Now what happens right now if we do ctip, it works out. It uses the 15%. And it figures it out as the 150, and then it adds it to the total, and everything's working. But the problem is, if somebody puts in 25, which should be 250, it doesn't change. And now if I click the up button, it goes up to 16, and it goes back down to 15. So there's a problem here. We have an issue if someone actually enters a number in the field, which is quicker than using these up and down buttons. It's a problem, and we need to address that problem, and it's not that hard to fix. And we didn't take that into account when we started, but the next exercise we do, we'll probably try to take that into account as far as what happens to the variables. Now, the problem we have here, and if I just reset this again, the problem we have is when we set this variable here, we basically, here's where we set it. We set the value to 15. We set the default value of this field to 15, and then we basically took that value and made it our variable. So we're starting with 15, and then we're taking that 15, making sure it's a number, and then we're going into these functions and we're saying, okay, take that 15 and go up or go down. And then we ctip and it figures everything out, except what it doesn't take into account if somebody goes and puts in a value other than 15. Everything's going in a linear manner right now. It's going from here down to here and down to here, and it's using these buttons, and it's not taking account what would happen if somebody puts in a different value. So we have to do that. So we just have to make sure that when these functions are called, the go down function, the go up function, and the ctip function, we just have to make sure that any kind of value that's entered in here, whether it's the value that comes initially from 15 or the value that someone enters in here, is taken into account so we can use that. So we have to put it in all three cases. We have to put it here. So if someone puts a 25 in here, they can go down to 24, 23, and if, or they could go up above 25. And then when they see ctip, it'll use that value. So what we have to do is just look at our code here, and here's where the variable's generated, and we're just going to use that again. We can copy this. Now we don't have to redeclare the variable. It was declared outside of the function, so we don't want to redeclare it inside the function. What we want to do is just go here inside all three functions and just paste that code, except get rid of the var. We don't need to initially do it with the var. We're just going to kind of redeclare or reset our tip percent to kind of update. So it's now using a value. So when we use the go down button, it's still going to take the value. So if somebody puts in a value, it's going to take that in account first and then use that and go down. And then same thing here. So I'm going to highlight this, and I kept the parse float in there so it keeps it a number, which is probably a good idea. It certainly doesn't hurt. And I'll put this one in here. So same thing happens. So when they use the go up button, they're going to first check to see what this value is, regardless if it was 15 or if somebody puts in another number. And then finally, we're going to have to do it in the other one too. Now let me just leave it here and see what happens. I'm going to put in a 10, and I'll save this. And actually what I should do, and I should have done this first, I guess you could do this to this. I'm just going to fork it, and I'll change the name, and I'll just put a -fix after there. If you don't do that, if you do it ahead of time, that's great. If you forget to and you just update your ex5-tipcalc, that's fine as well. So I'm just going to do that and save it. So I still have my first version of my second one, but that's not a big deal. So anyway, what I did was, again, I put these values that we're getting from whatever somebody puts in here in both the up and down. So now if I put in a 10 here, and just to make the math easy, and now if I put in 25 and I go down, it should go down to 24, 23. And if I put in a 25 again, it should go up to 26, 27. Now when I see tip, let's see if it works out. It works out to 280, and let me go down and see tip and see if it goes down to 20. So that seems to be working out. Now let me just try one other thing. That seems to work out, and we didn't have to put anything in the ctip function. But let's just refresh it again. Now what if I just put in a 10 and I put in a 25 here, and I don't use any of these up and down buttons? Let's see what happens. I'll hit ctip, and it's still using the 150. That's actually not right because it should be 250. It's actually not right because what's happening in the ctip function down here, it's still using the tip percent that we're getting from the original 15. It's not taking these in account. It's not taking the new value in account that somebody just put in here. So if they circumvent these arrows, C-tip is still not realizing that it's not starting at 15. So we need to also copy these two lines, to the one that gets the value that the user enters, and also the parse float, which makes sure it's a number. And I'll just copy that. And I'll just make sure it's the first thing in here. I'll put it as the first part, just like we did in those other two functions. So again, we're just getting the value inside those functions, so when people click these buttons, they're getting that value, whatever someone put in. So let me save this, and I'll just put in 10 again. And now I'll change this to be 25, and I'll C-tip. And then I'll try to go down, and that works. And I'll try to go up, and that works. So we're covering every base by doing this. And all we had to do is just make sure that our original variable of tip percent, not only was it set outside the functions, but we also had to redeclare it inside the functions so that it was taking whatever the current value that someone puts in there. So if someone puts in a current value and uses the down button or the up button, or they just go and put in a value and put C-tip, everything still works. So that's just a little, kind of a bug fix, not really a bug fix, but it's a kind of a user issue that we needed to address by checking kind of all situations here, and then that's really what we have to do. And we might adjust that differently in our next exercise, but it's good to kind of make sure we try everything out and make sure there's nothing that's not working correctly, and that's how we learn. Okay, so that's ex5-tipcalc-fix, and you just have to update that, and that'll count as another small exercise.